Hello everyone, Mr. Wolf Recaps here. Today I'm going to explain the mystery thriller film called Julia's Eyes. Relax and enjoy.
The film begins when we see a blind woman named Sara talking to an invisible presence. The presence torments her for days. He plays songs and follows her around the house. Sara can't take this anymore, so she goes to the basement to hang herself. Just then he felt a presence near him and changed his mind. But before she can remove the noose, someone drops the tool. A person in the corner clicks a camera and pictures her hanging to death. A set of hospital tools lies on a table nearby. Sara's twin sister Julia lives miles away from her. As Sara hangs to her death, Julia collapses, senses something is wrong, and decides to visit Sara. Julia and her husband Isaac came looking for Sara and found her dead in the basement. Both Sara and Julia have the same type of disease that progressively worsened their vision, eventually rendering them blind. But Sara's vision worsened before Julia at home. The policeman suggests that it be declared a case of suicide. He suspects that Sara is depressed because of her blindness, so she committed suicide. However, Julia insists that Sara was not waiting for a donor to restore her sight. She believes that it is not suicide, but murder. He then informs her about a blind lady named Soledad that Sara talked to Julia with, visits Soledad, and learns about a place called the Bauman Center, a place for handicapped people. She tells her that Sara made new friends there. Julia visits the place. When he goes there, he hears a group of blind women gossiping. Sara had a boyfriend with whom she went to a hotel in Bella Vista. The women noticed Julia's presence and confronted her. When she introduced herself, they asked who was the man she came with. Julia is surprised because she came alone, but the women sent someone to stand behind her. Julia sees someone coming out. She chases the person and reaches a small dark room. The person is right in front of her, but she can't see him because of the darkness. He flashes the camera, which distracts Julia, and he dodges so her vision fades. Isaac wants to return home because the stress will cause Julia to lose her eyesight, but she convinces him to go to Bella Vista for a vacation. In reality, she wants to meet Sara's boyfriend that the blind women have been talking about. By the time they get to Bella Vista, she chooses the hotel where Sara stayed with her boyfriend at the hotel. Can't find any record of Sara's boyfriend. Later at lunch, the waitress tells her that her twin Sara has already had eye surgery, so she is confused as to why Sara committed suicide since she already had the surgery. Isaac then reveals that Sara's doctor told him that her eye surgery was a failure according to him. This is the reason Sara committed suicide while Julia was about to leave the hotel. A janitor named GRB says he found something in Sara's hotel room. He leads her to Sara's room and gives her the key that belonged to Sara crest below. He also tells her to watch out for the man in the dark. Just then Julia felt someone behind her. The person runs away before he can catch him. Julia and Isaac then go get the surveillance footage to identify the person Sara was with. Isaac goes in to get the video, but never comes back. When Julia goes to look for him, Isaac is gone. All recordings are also gone. She reports Isaac's disappearance to the police and tells them about the invisible man. Just then we see the reef below taking a bath. Someone turns off the light bulb above him. It electrocuted him. The police and Julia come looking for the coat of arms underneath and find him dead. Julia is now sure that the invisible man killed the man below and kidnapped her husband and is worried about Isaac. She suffers an attack that further weakens her vision. She goes to her doctor, who tells her she has less than a month before she goes completely blind. He organizes transplantation and surgery. Later that day, she returns to Soledad's house. Soledad had a husband and a son. Her husband left her and another took care of her for 10 years before he suddenly left. One day soon, the police find Isaac's last location, a motel. In the room where he stayed, they also found his wedding ring. While the inspector and Julia are talking in the motel, another policeman arrives and says that someone is at Julia's house. The two go back. The inspector goes to report to the room. When Julia hears a noise from the basement, she goes down to check, but due to her eyesight and the darkness in the room, she does not see anything. She feels around the room and suddenly touches the frightened man. He starts shouting for help. The inspector comes down and tries to calm her down. Suddenly the lights come back on. Isaac's body hangs from the ceiling. He committed suicide. But even when the lights are on, Julia cannot see. She is completely blind. The next day at the hospital, the inspector tells Julia about Isaac's suicide note. He had an affair with Sara 6 months before her death. He killed himself because he could no longer lie to Julia. A few days later, Julia undergoes surgery. He has to live with a bandage around his eyes for a week. Only after that we will know if the operation was successful, during which time she will remain under observation at her twin's house. The hospital gives Julia a janitor named Ivan to help her around the house. He gives her a device to hang around her neck, so she can call him whenever she wants. That night, Julia has a nightmare of Isaac and Sara trying to remove her bandage. She wakes up scared. Then he hears footsteps outside. She calls Ivan through the device. He tells her to get out of the house. She runs away. Just then someone took the key downstairs. Later the police came the next day but found no evidence of an attack. Ivan lovingly changes Julia's bandage. For the next few days, he takes very good care of her, changing bandages, cooking for her, listening to music with her and whatever else is needed. But through all that time we never see Ivan's face. On the third day, Julia asks him to stay for a drink. They talk about Isaac, after which she kisses him. That night, Julia is awakened by a nightmare. As she reaches for her wedding ring on the side table, we see a set of hospital tools similar to the one from the night of Sara's death. Someone behind her is trying to inject her with drugs. This wakes her up and she finally touches the man in terror. She runs out of the house only for her neighbor to run out and go home. His daughter Leah is home. He lets her in, but starts bullying Julia. She is soon surprised to find Sara's key in his house. She carries it with her. She runs away from his house and hides in a corner, calling Ivan for help. Finally Ivan comes to save her. She is too scared to enter his house, so he takes her to his place. She tells him that she is found Sara's key at Mr. Blasco's house. She suspects that Blasco is the invisible man. Ivan leaves for a while when Leah approaches Julio. She followed them here and sneaked into the house through the windows. Leah tells Julia that she is the one who stole the key to her house and that she knows who killed Sara and Isaac. It's the invisible man. Leah reveals that she used to be close to Sara and knows a lot about the invisible man. Julia doesn't believe it, but Leah insists on unlocking one of the locks in Ivan's house with a key. Ivan drugged Julia to make her blind, like he did with Sara. Leah tells Julie to go to the bathroom and stay there until Leah finds a way to escape. When Ivan returns, she asks him to take her to the bathroom. Then she opens the bandage 4 days before the appointment. Luckily the operation was a success and she is happy to have her sight back. She quickly goes outside and enters one of the rooms. She was shocked to see many pictures of Sara and herself on the wall. Julia leaves the room to look for Leah, but sees her body impaled on the wall. Ivan killed them. She sits in the corner crying. Just then, Ivan enters the room. We see his face for the first time. It was spattered with Leah's blood. Julia presents herself as if the operation was unsuccessful and she pretends she is still blind. Ivan expresses his love to her. Now she is with him in the kitchen. She sees him putting drugs into her cup of tea. Julia then replaced her cup of tea with his. Ivan does not notice, but becomes suspicious, takes her to the freezer and asks her to open it inside. It's the dead body of the real Ivan. Julia gasps, revealing that she can actually see the imposter. Ivan calls her a liar. He then takes her to Sara's house, but Julia manages to escape from him. To Soledad's house, she asks to call the police, but Ivan arrives before she does. He calls Soledad mom, revealing that he is actually her son. Hell, Julia begs Soledad to call the police, but he convinces her that he's not the killer. Then Soledad hits Julia on the head with the phone. Hal realizes that his mother can see. Soledad reminds him that he will be nothing without her. This disturbs her, so he chokes her. He wants her to be blind again. He hooks her eyes with a needle. When Julia wakes up, she is in the basement of Sara's house on the hill in front of her. He has packed all her clothes and plans to take her to live with him. When he started kissing her, Julia took a knife and stabbed him in the legs. She quickly runs out of the basement and locks him there, but he can't leave the house. She calls the police. He breaks the door. Julia turns off all the lights in the house. It's pitch black. He uses his camera's flash to search for Julia and finds her while there. Tries to stab her. The police enter, but they don't see anyone in the dark room either. Julia takes one of their torches and shines it in the corner. The shadow finally comes out and can't stand being watched by so many people, so he cut his own throat, killing himself. A few weeks later, Julia is in the hospital. She believes the damage to her new eyes is irreversible because her fake guardian kept injecting her with injections. Using the last few hours of the vision, Julia says goodbye to Isaac's corpse. It is revealed that he gifted her with eyes. Sara and Julia have a condition called degenerative vision. This causes them to progressively lose their sight and eventually become blind. Sara loses her sight before. Julia is still fascinated by blind girls. He calls himself the Invisible Man. This is a metaphor for him. He tries to say that he has no friends or family. No one notices him when he is around, because he is not worthy of attention. He has developed the ability to be stealthy over time and thus effectively stops his victims. He took care of his mother Soledad for 10 years, thinking she was blind. Soledad was the only person he talked to about this, filled with resentment towards everyone who didn't notice or care about him. However, he fell in love with Sara and then Julia. According to him, only blind girls could sense his presence. Sara tells her other blind friends at the blind center that she has been dating someone. After her eye surgery, she goes to a hotel in Bella Vista for a week. He has bandages on his eyes at the moment. We are not told what circumstances she is facing. Perhaps he was posing as her guardian and his empathy won Sara over to the subject of wanting Sara's sight back. He makes sure to sneak up on Sara at night and inject her eyes with chemicals that destroy the optic nerve. The doctor states that the operation failed. Sara learns that someone is following her. She felt his presence and was angry with him, so he killed her. When Julia came looking for Sara on the hill, she saw it as another opportunity for love. But Julia always had her husband by her side. However, her neighbor Leah helped Julia learn about his true intentions before he managed to completely blind Julia in the end. Finally, Julia makes it visible to everyone. He was always a lonely man. So when the policeman shined a light in his eyes, he couldn't stand it and ended up killing himself.
Thanks a lot for watching, guys. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to my channel.